Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have a terrific show for you today. The brilliant poets S.A. Griffin and Richard Modiano will read the poetry of the legendary poets Bob Kaufman and William J. Margolis. Richard Modiano wrote, quote, Bob Kaufman, 1925-1986, was an influential American poet, often associated with the Beat Generation and the San Francisco Renaissance. Born in New Orleans to a German Jewish father and Black Catholic mother, Kaufman's multicultural heritage deeply informed his work. He served in the U.S. Merchant Marine before settling in San Francisco, where he became a vital voice in North Beach's bohemian scene. Known for his surreal imagery, jazz-inspired rhythms, and oral improvisations, Kaufman earned the nickname the Black American Rimbaud. His collections include Solitudes, Crowded with Loneliness, 1965, and Golden Sardines, 1967, and most recently, the collected poems of Bob Kaufman, 2019. Despite periods of silence and marginalization, his work profoundly shaped American avant-garde poetry. End of quote. S.A. Griffin wrote, William J. Margolis, 1927, 1996.
1998.
Pardon?
Go ahead.
Poet, publisher, editor, artist, Beat Generation mover and shaker, was born in Chicago. He served in the U.S. Navy and upon his discharge moved to San Francisco, where he was very active in the jazz, poetry, and beat scenes of North Beach. A close friend of legendary poet Bob Kaufman, Margolis Kaufman, and John Kelly, with an assist from Allen Ginsberg, edited and published the quintessential beat periodical Beatitude. In 1950, Margolis fell from the second-story window of his San Francisco apartment, impaling himself on a fire hydrant. Soon after, he was relocated to Long Beach Naval Hospital for his recovery. While there, he discovered the Venice West scene and consequently never left Southern California. He spent the remainder of his life wheelchair bound. Here are two marvelous erudite poets who are leaders in the LA poetry community and beyond, S.A. Griffin and Richard Modiano.
Well, thank you, Harry. It seems appropriate to start with a poem by William Margolis called My Lady's Laughter. And one of the characteristic features of readings by the Venice Beats in particular was a homage to the muse, who they referred to as the lady. So, My Lady's Laughter by William Margolis. By candle, wick bent, and steady flame, casting motionless point, where pen touches wordless page, I wait. She wakes and touches me, and the shadow moves, black across the page of light. Wail! The laughter of candles wickers in her hair and snuffle deep in love-drunk slumbers. Deep glacier darkness melted to torrents of mirthful words howling through this shadowed hand, touched by the moon. I know it's full tonight. We tasted its secret rippled song. Only when the moon is full do poets become sane and sage. Only when the lady touches cool the page does the poet know his word and craft of cool dark light, of inside touching with tender sight. That love begets more love, and night forgets the darkness is absurd. The moon is full, and is full of my lady's laughter. William Margolis.
He actually fell in 1959 and he died in 1998. There's still Bill Margolis, William Julius Margolis, is within our circles. He's a big mythical figure out of that window. The questions remain: was it deliberate or was it accidental? I believe both. It was never meant to be, but it was meant. Anyway, I'm going to read something from Bill Margolis's manuscript, which has yet to be published. I've done the editing on it. I think I might do a little more editing on it, actually. It's called the Pain Journal. Connected notes and excerpts from a paraplegic's diary. And this was what he kept when he was in rehab in Long Beach after falling from the window in San Francisco and impaling himself on a fire hydrant. He kept a diary and an account of life after that. And not this one, where's the other? Oh, I have it right here. This poem appears in the text of the book, and it was when things got hot in San Francisco with the so-called beatniks, a new word coined by Herb Caen as a slander. It was a marriage of beat and Sputnik. And when I talked to some of the people from the period, they didn't really like beatnik because it was really not a nice term. They were considered the lowest of the low, and they kind of
Sort of a Cold War slur, reference to Sputnik.
Yeah, Sputnik. That's what I said. Yeah, Sputnik. Yeah. Anyway, so we go on and on, but I don't want to spend too much time. But anyway, this is a poem that he wrote to Herb Caen about the word beatnik, basically. A prose poem strictly for the local scene, like maybe it's an open letter to Herbert Q. Caen. It starts this way. Dear unadulterated sir, it may no doubt come as a shock to you that the word beat comes from, well, let's face it, man, is a four-letter Anglo-Saxon word. It goes like this, dear as yet unobliterated sir. It may surprise you, but beat is, well, one of the nasty type words, like, well, maybe love and care. Two more signs the squares have turned inside out. Man, like love is that feeling you get when you think of, that soap and the skin you hope to, while care comes in little packages these days, mass produced to alleviate our neo-Victorian jukebox refrigerator guilts. I mean, it says to him, dear undesirable sir, it may come to you as no surprise to you, though I'm sure you decently hide the fact, that there just aren't any of these books around here, or at least everyone I've asked denies it. Like, man, we know. We understand your problems. We dig them, and all the other flatter flats couldn't make your buck if you didn't have a foil for the buttered side of your bread. I mean, those well-breadies you bend the elbow with at those high prices, like pig. We're your fall guys. The old dragon at the gates routine. The scapegoats you can put down and out. So your contented money feeling won't scrape on the bottom of our frayed and failing faith in the great American triple play. I mean, your confidence in the consecrated con game of profits, progress, and past the ammunition. I say to the man, dear un-American sir, when anybody says to me, are you now or have you ever been or was your great-grand twice removed third cousin's father-in-law, son or daughter ever a member of the Beat generation? Why, man, I answer quick. I say like, that is, huh? Well, Beat? You mean... Well, I'll tell you, I was walking down Grant Avenue the other night, floating kind of hot, man, like my chick. She said I was the most to her, and she said she wanted to make it with me like always. Well, I was out of my skull stuff like that, buzzing my brain, and man, I didn't even notice these guys, gorilla suits, why I just didn't. And when I passed by, they said, there's one. There's a weirdie. There's one of the beatniks. And man, they came at me like that leather jacket crowd in their brothers' disguises, and they grabbed my arms and they grabbed my beard and they had a ball, baby, all over me. I mean, I was for real what you'd call heat. Like, I swear, time the fuzz walked up and asked me if I was annoying these gentlemen, I have been ever since, and always will be, a genuine, life dues paid up, scar carrying member of the beaten up generation. But this epistle to the Philistine does come to an end. It says in brief, "Dear unspeakable sir, man, why don't you just forget all about this beat generation and beat nigga shit so everybody can too? I mean, maybe then some of us poets, painters, and all, who were never beat nor had time for such crap and its flax, maybe then we could do our work, make our buck, drink our wine, and not be pestered by stupid questions from stupid porters and their square bit vicarious kick-seeking readers anymore. I mean, like, bow out, man. Cool it. Later, William G. Margolis." To you, Richard.
The Night That Lorca Comes by Bob Kaufman. The night that Lorca comes shall be a strange night in the South. It shall be the time when Negroes leave the South forever. Green trains shall arrive from red planet Mars. Crackling blueness shall send tooth-covered cars for them to leave in, to go into the North forever. And I see my little girl mother again with her cross that is not burning, her skirts of black, of all colors, her aura of familiarity. The South shall weep, bitter tears to no avail. The Negroes have gone into crackling blueness. Crispus Atticus shall arrive with Boston Commons to take Alyssa Landy north. Crispus Attucks shall be laying on Boston Commons. Alyssa Landy shall feel alive again. I shall call her name as she steps onto Boston Commons and flies north forever. Lincoln shall be there to see them leave the South forever. Alyssa Landy, she will be green. The white South shall gather at Preservation Hall. Bob Kaufman.
Yeah. All right. A classic by Bob Kaufman. And it's from the aforementioned collection by Tate Swindell, Neely Cherkovsky, Raymond Foy, and Devorah Major. And I cannot recommend this book enough. They did an amazing job with it. Would you wear my eyes? My body is a torn mattress, disheveled throbbing place for the comings and goings of loveless transients. The whole of me is an unfurnished room filled with dank breath escaping in gasps to nowhere. Before the objective mirrors, I have shot myself with my eyes, but death refused my advances. I have on my walls each night through strange landscapes in my. I have brushed teeth with orange peel, iced with cold blood from the dripping faucets. My face is covered with maps of dens. My hair is littered with drying ragweed. Bitter raisins drip haphazardly from my nostrils, while schools of glowing minnows swim from my mouth. The nipples of my breasts are sun-brown cockleburrs. Long forgotten Indian tribes fight battles on my chest, unaware of the sunken ships rotting in my stomach. My legs are charred remains of burned cypress trees. My feet are covered with moss from bayous flowing across my floor. I can't go out anymore. I shall sit on my ceiling. Would you wear my eyes?
Gently the Moon by William Margolis. Breathe in gently the moon and lightly finger the night leaves. Fragrances anoint the eyes, and birds quote broken riffs in their sky blue dreams. Break the tongues of silence, muffling fast fingers, wishes, and shadows. Moon cast creases rejoice at unknown breaks as they fall into unknown places. Unheard hallelujahs shout the hand clapping traces, diminished receding paths through pain forest of fright to discover stone gods and futures redeemed by moonlight and birds and reverenced for the crushed yearning of petals. William Margolis.
So I'm going to read another excerpt from the Paine Journal, and this is a couple of minutes. So when you come back, Richard, you might want to do a couple of pieces.
Okay.
And this is, there's been, within the beat world, there's always discussions about different things. One of them is beatitude and its origins. And so for a lot of people out there, I thought this might be a fun piece to read. And, you know, I told Harry before this, I'm really glad you did this, Harry, because William Margolis has pretty much just been completely forgotten. And he was a major mover and shaker in his day. And Bob Kaufman was one of the most influential poets of the 20th century, and he's only just being remembered these past few years. So thank you for doing this. And they were also really great friends. Chapter 32 from the Paine Journal. I was walking down Grant Avenue one day, enjoying my lack of employment, when a friend, Bob Alexander, stopped me and asked if I wanted a job. But this was no ordinary job. My primary duty would be there to answer the phone, take orders for work. It was a small print shop owned by Bob and another friend, both of them having other jobs. My hours were 5 p.m., and I was free to use the printing equipment, either for jobs they had taken in or for my own projects and amusement. The pay was only $25 a week for 25 hours. Later, they raised it to $30. But then my rent was low, and I was picking up a little from the poetry readings and from selling copies of the Miscellaneous Man. Late one morning, I was sitting in Cassandra's having some coffee and cake before going to work at the print shop, when some friends sat down at my table and started telling me about the magazine they were. They asked me if I'd help them, since they knew I'd been publishing for 5 years. Bob and John Richardson and Stan Weitzer told me about Beatitude. I think the name was Stan's idea. And about John Kelly, who was to be the publisher since he's an angel for the rental of a Banham Alley pad, a typewriter, a Mimeo machine, cans of ink, and reams of paper. That evening after work, I went over to John Kelly, the sweetest philanthropic nuts who ever lived. But neither he nor anyone else had known how to get the thing off the ground. So I shared typing stencils, wrote the copy for the title page, a miscellany of poetry and other jazz designed to extol beauty and promote the beatific life among the mendicants, non-substantialists, Christs, poets, painters, musicians, and other inhabitants and observers of North Beach, San Francisco. Got Mel Fowler to do the cover art around my St. Francis poem, and everyone helped with whatever talents of organizing, promoting, editing, running the mimeograph, touting, etc. we had. And in 1 week, Beatitude number 1 appeared. All the poets whose work was included were the salesmen and women, and got a good percentage of the sales. Kaufman's Abominus Manifesto had been off and on the Mimeo a week or so earlier, on the back of some old Republican Party campaign leaflets found in the old monkey block. The manifesto was also put into Beatitude as the last page, and every issue thereafter had further elucidations of the Abominus message in that space, all written by Baumkopf, except an encyclopedic work, excerpts for the lexicon of Baumjan that I held in scrambling Kaufman's and my own satirical talents. Abominism, noun, footprintism, a rejectionary philosophy by Barabbas, see Beatitude 2, and dedicated to the proposition that the essence of existence is reality, essential, and neither foresighted nor Frankie, but not non-Frankie either. Frankism was defined as a subcult of abominism, not authorized nor given abominitude by Baumkopf. These political works of mine were written under the abominam de plume of BIMGO. For 7 weekly issues, Beatitude streamed and screamed out of Bantam Alley until John Kelly decided he had enough hassle trying to keep us well fed on bread, bologna, and cheese from Ken's Grocery, and occasional sit-down meals with red wine at one of the Italian restaurants on Grad Avenue. Enough hassle trying to keep various poets from lushing it up or turning on in the magazine office, making for him with the landlord, etc. He sat in the office a couple of days sulking while Bob and I tried to figure out how to pry him loose from the manuscripts we'd all collected, and so we could take them up to the poet minister Pierre Delatre's bread and wine mission, since Pierre had agreed to take up the publisher duty as well and add his poetic wisdom as an additional editor. I think it was Pierre who later referred to Beatitude as a floating crap game.
Well, and just a couple of words about Beatitude. The ones that Margolis and Kaufman put out lasted 17 issues. And then it was revived in the, between that last issue, which I believe came out in 1961, there was one or two scattered issues, and then it was officially revived again in North Beach in the early 1970s, 73 or 74, by Neely Cherkovsky, among others. And of course, Kaufman was still there and became a contributor to the second revival. And then it was revived again in the 90s, that essay read from earlier. So,
yeah. And then they had the Beatitude 50th anniversary.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then that was like a perfect bound book. This is Believe by Bob Kaufman. Believe in this. Young apple seeds in blue skies, radiating young breasts, not in blue-suited insects, infesting society's garments. Believe in the swinging sounds of jazz, tearing the night into intricate shreds, putting it back together again in cool, logical patterns, not in the sick controllers who created only the bomb. Let the voices of dead poets ring louder in your ears than the screechings mouthed in mildewed editorials. Listen to the music of the centuries, rising above the mushroom time. And obviously that mushroom time, he's talking about the mushroom cloud as well. So that's Bob Kaufman. And sort of a response to that by William Margolis, not a deliberate one, but it happens to fit in. This is called The Radical by William Margolis. He goes to the roots. I've said it all. Time to start a new poem, but who goes to the roots sees both a virtual image and reality, above ground and underground. The pejoratives may now be forgotten. I've said it all. Time to start a new poem, that which makes you, me, be me, starting at the roots. That's it. Time to make a new beginning, a new being, regarding carefully source of becoming, seeing slippery alternatives at beginnings. But he goes to the roots to start seeing, being. He finds new grown paths to new ways of growing, the beckoning of the leaves, the blossoms, the need to continue, to breed new being. That's it. Beginning at the roots and leaping up through all the detailed cells, the many passages through changes at each moment. Movement, a question that must be answered now. N-O-W, now. If there is to be a leaf, if there is to be a flower flowing, the constant energy from all the lovers' love, from the scholars, the workmen, the transformation from cell to cell, faith and trust in love, flowing from root to eternity to the flower. The one who flows grows, knows the highest tree bud ecstasy and joy of intellect. The radical goes to the roots and leaves, leaps to nectar and seed, that which makes new joy. He goes back, going forth, forms change, joys must be reborn. Now, if there is to be the leaf, the artifact of living, the manifest, if there is to be the bloom and the need for beauty, it is time. Now, 9, he goes to the roots of ecstasy and flows in joyful potency, potentiality. It's time for beauty. It's time then for its need. It's time for source and end to see unity, for nevertheless it moves. And no pejorative can force eternal ignorance. The need cannot ignore the root, and thus he goes down to find the top, and thus he goes making, being made joy.
All right.
The radical William Margolis.
I'm going to read something by Bob Kaufman. Come, come, let us journey to the sky. It's the moon. All that I come from, all that I have been, all that I am, all that I come to, all that I touch, blossoms from a thorn, a rose, a rose. Love is the condition of human beings being humans. To be loved is all I need, and whom I love is loved indeed. There never was a night that ended or began, forms breaking, structures imaged. Come, love, love. Go ahead, Richard.
And this is also by Bob Kaufman. It's called Walking Parker Home. Parker was Bob Kaufman's son. Walking Parker Home. Sweet beats of jazz impaled on slivers of wind. Kansas black morning, first horn eyes, historical sound pictures on new bird wings. People shouts, boy alto dreams, tomorrow's gold-belled pipe of stops and future blues times. Lurking Hawkins, shadows of Leicester, realization, bronze fingers, brain extension, sinking trapped sounds, ghetto thoughts, bandstand courage, solo flight, nerve-racked suspicions of newer songs and doubts, New York altar city, black tears, secret disciples, hammer horn pounding soul marks on unswinging gates, culture gods, mob sounds, visions of spikes, panic excursions to tribal jazz wombs and transfusions, heroin nights of birth, and soaring over boppy new ground, smothered rage covering pyramids of notes spontaneously exploding, cool revelations, shrill hopes, beauty speared into greedy ears, birdland nights on bop mountains, windy saxophone revolutions, day rooms of junk and melting walls of encircling vultures, money cancer, and melting walls and circling vultures, money cancer, remembered pain, terror nights, money cancer, death, and indestructible existence. In that jazz corner of life, wrapped in a mist of sound, his legacy, our jazz tinted dawn, wailing his triumphs of oddly begotten dreams, inviting the nerveless to feel once more, that fierce dying of humans consumed in raging fires of love. Bob Kaufman, Walking Parker Home.
I'm going to follow that then with To My Parker, Asleep in the Next Room. I hope Parker hears this sometime too. He's a good guy. On ochre walls and ice-formed caves, shaggy Neanderthals marked their place. On germinal trees and equatorial stands, embryonic giants carved beginnings. On Tasmanian flatlands, mowed first men hacked rock, still soft. On Melanesian mountain peaks, barked heads were reared in pride and beauty. On steamy Java's cooling lava, stooped humans raised stones to altar height. On newborn China's plain mythless of Han acquired peak gods with teak faces. On holy India's sacred soil, future gods carved worshipped reflections. On Coptic Ethiopia's Pimple Rock pyramid, builders tore volcanoes from earth. On death-loving Egypt's godly sands, living sacrifices carved power. On Sumeria's cliffs, speechless artists gouged messages to men yet uncreated. On glorious Assyria's earthen dens, art priests chip figures of awe in hidden dimensions. On splendored Peru's gold-stained body, filigreed temples were torn from severed hands. On perfect Greece's bloody marble stirred under hand. On degenerate Rome's trembling and sod imitators sculpted lies into beauty. On slopes prostrate forms chained souls shaped free men. On wild America's green torso original men painted glacial languages. On cold Arctica's snowy surface leathery men totems in frozen air. On this shore you are all men before, forever, eternally free in all things. On this shore we shall raise our monuments of wood, of mud, of color, of labor, of belief, of being, of life, of love, of sinews, of memories, of mind, of soul, of self, of man expressed in self-determined compliance or revolt, secure in this avowed that no man is our master, nor can any ever be at any time in time to come.
Well, I've run out of Margolis poems to read, but let me see if I can pull one out from an issue of Beatitude. I want to see.
Oh, cool, man, cool. And I'm telling you, man, I'm honored to be here with you today, Harry, and with Richard and just dang man. And how many shows is this for you now, Harry? 5,033 or something like that. It's quite a few. You've been doing this forever, and it's a blessing and a gift. Thank you very much. Here comes Richard now.
Oh, yes, here we go.
And to all you people paying attention out there, thank you.
This is a beatitude that we've been talking about. One of the Margolis.
There you go. Yeah.
Rogue River for Skip. Rivers don't rhyme at the end of a line, but swirl about a stone alone, or paired, sharing space. The flow around a sound, coalescent, liquescent, substance rolling, curling over stones, sound around. There is a stone around a rhyme, no line, but flow precedes. And then, hello, St. Francis. Hello, St. Francis. Like, you're the only saint I dig. This may be pretentious of me or like not really cool, but man, I know those birds and flowers too. William Margolis.
All right. Well, I'm going to read another excerpt from the Paine Journal, and this has never been published. I've been sitting on it for a couple of years, but I think I'm going to add some his questionnaire piece to this, which is his epic masterpiece, before it's published. Anyway, this is how he basically first came into Venice West and discovered Venice West. Ultimately, then, after his recovery, stayed here in Southern California and spent the rest of his life here. April 10th, 1960. Another. This will attempt to chronicle a pleasantly chaotic, gimpy trip. I thought Stuart Perkoff's around midnight was going last night, Saturday, at the Muse in Santa Monica. So I got Stan, another gimp Nick, who drives his own car and is quite proficient at weed, generally well adapted to his chair by years of experience, to go with me. We didn't know exactly where the place was, nor even exactly how to get to Venice, but we followed our noses and asked some questions. People were very suspicious and hesitated to cross the street to talk to us, even after we explained we couldn't eat out of the car. And they could see our wheelchairs folded in the back seat. And finally found the place. We parked in a lot, and when we came to the block where the theater was, there was no driveway or ramp. So I had to climb up the curb with the help of a parking meter and Stan pushing from behind. The Cinemuse was a tiny little box of a place that showed really old movies. There was a customer, Bob Chatterton, told me Stu's play wasn't scheduled for about 2 weeks, but invited us in to see the movies. We watched a couple of them, talked to Bob a few minutes. We again negotiated the curb this time, ridiculously easy for Stan and ridiculously difficult for me. Rolled down the beach from Santa Monica to Ocean Park. The place is an endless variety of arcades, pop ends, kosher delicatessens, old pensioners, young punk kids in crew cuts with glamorized and eyeshadowed chicks, sometimes in tow. We passed this place called Carousel, and I heard some good sounds coming through the solid purple-gray wall. The front door had a sign, "Use side entrance." Alongside was a narrow, piss-smelling passageway. I started through when two lushes, ho, 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 took both me and Stan by the wheelchair handles and declared they'd get us in. The corridor was wide enough, and so was the door. But just inside the place was built and as to be just too narrow to let a wheelchair through. We went back out, and the drunks pounded on the front door until someone opened it. News of our arrival having some in the side door, even if the chairs had gone in the side door, if the chairs hadn't made it. We were ushered in, warned to avoid a small hole in the wooden floor, and then heard a girl's voice shout my name. I turned toward the shout, and this girl was climbing over the tables and benches through the line dancers. Me rushed up and gave me the most wonderful and long and loving kiss. I recognized her from San Francisco, embarrassed because I couldn't remember her name. How we first discovered Venice Beach, looking for Stuart Perkoff.
Well, I'm going to finish with this final poem by William Margolis. And this is from the last of the Kaufman Margolis issues of Beatitude, number 17. Cry for Brownsville. I smelled a memory in San Francisco. Soon I remembered Herzl Street, where we played kick the can and stole Baby Ruths from Saul's candy store in Pitkin, and Irving Fingerman with red pimples on his ass, explaining the miracle of masturbation. Remember the house on Herzl? Where garbage was your garden, waves of latkes, garlic, and grease befouled those 3 rooms, smells of poverty inflamed the Friday walls. Whenever Mama lit the lick, each day of the week had an odor peculiar to that meal, all lingering behind every crack in the plaster. Smells erupting from the warehouse under your floor were artifacts of dinners cooked by Rosenfelds, Brodskys, and Kaplans, previous people in the apartment, number 3K. It was a smell shouting, "Jew, you're a Jew," even when you hid from it under the bed, from the geranium pot on the fire escape next to the empties, and forever Jew with the words, "Mordecai, bring me, please, a seltzer water from the icebox." And remember the house on Herzl Street? I could fill a chalice with tears in such a memory. William Margolis, which was a sort of a memory of growing up in a Jewish neighborhood in Chicago. Margolis was Jewish, of course, and what is so good about this poem to me is all of the latkes and the food, and they all still do have their own distinct odor and smell. So that was my last from Margolis, and I don't think I have anything else.
You want to not? So let me do another piece by Bob Kaufman. Then you want to close with something by Bob Kaufman?
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So let me read this piece by Bob Kaufman again from the same book. And this book is just amazing. Everyone should get it. And I also want to thank you, Jennifer, for doing everything that you do for everyone, and especially for Harry in this show. This show really is a blessing and a gift. You're amazing, Harry. October 5th, 1963. Chronicle. Letters to the Editor, 5th and Mission, San Francisco, California. Gentlemen, arriving back in San Francisco to be greeted by a blacklist and eviction, I am writing these lines to the responsible non-people. One thing is certain, I am not white. Thank God for that. It makes everything else bearable. The loneliness of the long-distance runner is due to the oneliness of the long-distance runner, that uniqueness that is the long-distance runner's alone and only his. The loneliness of the long-distance runner is the only reason for the long distance runner's existence. Short distance runners run. They finish neither first nor last. They finish. That is all that can be said about them. Nothing can be said for them. An ordinariness that is their closest proximity to the truly unique. Men die, as all men come to know, sooner or later. At any rate, either way, men die. On that, all men can depend. To answer that rarely asked question, why are all black lists white? Perhaps because all light lists are black. The listing of all that is listed is done by who is brown. The colors of an earthquake are black, brown, and beige on the Ellington scale. Such sweet thunder, there is a silent beat in between the drums. The silent beat makes the drum beat. It makes the drum. It makes the beat. Without it, there is no drum, no. It is not the beat played by who is beating the drum. He is a noisy, loud one. The silent beat is beaten by who is not beating on the drum. His silent beat drowns out all the noise. It comes before or after every beat. You hear it in between. Its sound is.
Okay, well, I guess we can finish off with when Essay was reading from the Margolis memoir earlier, he mentioned that each issue of Beatitude had something from the Abominist Manifesto. And so here is the section from number 17. Abomia Newscast. Every century on the hour. America collides with iceberg piloted by Lindbergh Baby. Amy Semple McPherson, former dictator of California, discovered in voodoo nunnery disguised as Moby Dick. New hit song sweeping the country. The Leopold and Loeb Cha-Cha-Cha. Pontius Pilate loses no-hitter on an error. League split over scorer's decision. Hebrew fireballers out for the season with uninjured hands. Civilian Defense Headquarters unveils new bomb shelter with two-car garage, complete with indoor patio and barbecue unit that operates on radioactivity. Comes in decorator colors, no down payments for vets, to be sold only to those willing to sign loyalty oath. Forest Lawn Cemetery opens new subdivisions of split-level tombs for middle-income group. President inaugurates new policy of aggressive leadership, declares December 25th Christmas Day. Pope may allow priests to marry, said to be aiming at one big holy family. Norman Rockwell cover, The Lynching Tree from Post-Americana series, wins DAR Americanism Award. Russians said to be copying TV format with Frontier Epic filmed in Berlin. New wagon train featuring the Mosley EV dancers. Red China cuts birth rate drastically. Bused events plummet to 200 million a year. Cubans seize Cuba. Outraged U.S. acts quickly. Cuts off tour rumba bands to detention camps during emergency. Hollywood premieres Technicolor film biography of Wernher von Braun, new Boy Scout idol. Movie depicts life of Yankee space idol, poetically titled I Aim at the Stars. Widescreen, sequel to World War II German film biography of Wernher von Braun. Hitler Youth Idol, poetically titled I Aim at the British Kindergartens. Both sides in Cold War stockpiling atomic missiles to preserve peace. End of mankind seen if peace is declared. UN sees encouraging signs in small war policy. Works quietly for wider participation among backward nations. End of news. Remember your national emergency signal. When you see one small mushroom cloud and three large ones, it is not a drill. Turn the TV off and get under it. Foregoing sponsored by your friendly neighborhood abominist. Tune in next world. Bob Kaufman. Well, I
Back
guess
to you, Aaron.
Yeah, back to you, Harry.
Well, thank you, S.A. and Richard, for such a loving, radiant reading. It was like a jazz performance, too. The musicality of their writing, the visionary aspect, the humor, and it just a history lesson of North Beach in that particular time and Venice West, and also in that poem that Richard read, uh, Believe, believe, let the voices of dead poets ring louder in your ears. And then the last two lines of that stanza, listen to the music of centuries rising above the mushroom time. As Richard pointed out, the atomic bomb that we all lived under that time. So this was really just a fabulous reading. What do you guys? All right, I began reading the New American Poetry. That was
Mhm.
my introduction to poetry and Ginsberg, Corso. All the poets that we all know. We tuned into at that time, and we saw we could write from our own lives, and it didn't have to be academic, and it was anti-academic. That most of those people were not teachers, but it was just such a radiant reading. So let's just talk a little bit about a couple of things. First of all, S.A. and Richard, looking back at these two poets, what do you see as their essence of their poetry? S.A.
Rage, outrage, love.
Mhm. Well, obviously, both poets, as you mentioned earlier, just a moment ago, Harry, they were living under imminent world destruction from atomic war. And Essay and I have talked about how the beats themselves emerged under the shadow of the mushroom cloud, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that was a very formative influence on their poetry, and it's carried over into the work of Margolis and Kaufman. And of course, that general sort of background was from where their individual voices emerged, from coming from different parts of the country. Um,
Well, their
uh,
Judaism is a big part of it.
yeah.
And then
Mm-hmm.
Margolis was the side too. I think he had a Christian upbringing as well, but he was primarily Jewish. Bob Kaufman had the same. He was Catholic, Jewish, all that kind of crap. So there's a lot of conflict. I think too the background of these guys, as I indicated earlier, they were referred to earlier as bohemians, I believe, or boho, something like that.
Yeah.
The beat thing didn't. They both talked about it. The beat thing wasn't even there then, but they were very reviled in their time. They were the lowest of the
Yeah.
low. And what was the name of that cop that he beat Kaufman and jailed him like what 63 times or something?
Yeah,
What
there
was the
was
name of that cop in
I
San
forget the
Francisco?
guy's name, but we don't need to remember somebody's name like that.
Yeah, but anyway, so the
But
point
yeah,
being,
yeah, he was Kaufman was harassed in North Beach by the police.
say the least, yeah,
He although he was of mixed race, he looked like a black man. He did
yeah,
not look like a white
yeah.
man.
We
And then
also wrote that
Margolis ended up in a
section.
wheelchair.
He also wrote those poems, jail poems, Bob
Yes,
Hoffman.
jail poems.
I was
Yeah.
in the Navy, and then in 59, I was up at Treasure Island waiting to go to Hawaii, and I visited North Beach. I'd read On the Road, etc. And I just remember there was a vision that I had of these poets just standing on a street corner in North Beach, and howling or, speaking out their poetry, which was, outside the academic walls, which was really a refreshing thing to do. Could you, Richard, why don't you start then? Say, could you each say something about their childhoods, if you know anything about their biography?
Well, I know that Kaufman's fortunately he was Louisiana is tolerant of interracial marriages, and in fact, it was one of the few states that allowed for interracial marriage at that time. In fact, there's a story about there was a journalist, Lafcadio Hearn, who was, I believe, from Cincinnati, Ohio, and he fell in love with a black woman, but he could not marry her in the state of Ohio. So he moved to Louisiana, and he was able to marry this woman in Louisiana where it was legal. So in that respect, Kaufman's parents could legally get married and have be respected within that particular context. But outside of, and that was an unusual exception, particularly in the South. But then, among Southern states, Louisiana is a sort of an outrider in some respects because of the. It was originally owned by France, and it was settled by Haitians. Haiti was a colony of France, a French colony. So the black population sort of originated in Haiti. The white population was French. They carried over their social and personal relations into this new territory, which was eventually sold to the United States. So Kaufman's childhood, as far as we know, was a pretty good one. He didn't experience the shock of prejudice until he went up north, ironically.
So I missed a lot of that because my Zoom dropped out, but I'm back.
Ah,
But I
well,
heard a lot of it. So we talk about Margolis. So
yeah, if you could say a few words
he
about
was from
Margolis.
basically a Jewish family. And again, I think he had a pretty decent childhood. I have pictures of him attending the World's Fair when he was like, what, 10 years old, I think, something like that, around that age in Chicago. And so anyway, he after his childhood, he served in the Navy. And then after that, he moved to San Francisco. And he was one of the things that we didn't touch upon, and Harry, you kind of picked up on through the reading. Uh, he was very involved in the jazz poetry scene. Ruth Weiss was there, and Rex Ralph, all those people. But he was very involved in the jazz poetry scene, and Kaufman was too. There was a lot. The jazz influence was really big on the whole scene back then, you know. And earlier when I talked about what do you think kind of driving their poetry, again getting married and what they were dealing with, which a lot of people don't really understand because they see images of Hollywood movies and TV and go, it's all and joy. But they really were. There's a whole piece in the Margolis book about how they went to a party and these college kids came to the party looking for him just to beat the shit out of him, and the cops were on him all the time. So that's why I was saying rage, outrage, and love. I think those that drove a lot of both their poetry. So anyway, but yeah, I don't know that about his childhood except it was predominantly in a Jewish family, and then he basically picks up because the material I have on him, there's not really much about his childhood because the book picks up after the accident and then talks somewhat about his childhood, but not a whole lot. Just who his parents were and his ancestors and things like that.
Well, thank you for, reviving that period of time. I remember when I first read those poets and others, the rhythm, the rhythmic movement of the beautiful language and the freedom. It was a taste of romanticism, coming out of conformity in the 50s, Peyton Place and the Cold War, as Richard mentioned. And so it was really, it was just really a taste of freedom. And I know you guys are deeply influenced by it. Many people are by the beat poets. From Allen Ginsberg, I got a sense of freedom. And these two guys are just beautiful. And there's also sorrow, and sorrow in them too. But, the jail poems, the suffering that they went through. But, the whole word, beat, benevolent, but beatific, beaten, beaten down. And then we open up. And it's just not an intellectual, mathematical quotient that makes a poem. It's all these human feelings of joy and suffering. And you guys just really evoked that time period in those poets. So, thank you very much. It's just beautiful you both have so much knowledge and love for Kaufman and Margolis, and they're important poets. And it's good to keep bringing these poets back. Because today, if you look at an anthology, mostly everybody in it are teachers and they talk about stories. But these people also were looking for form. They would get on their horn and blow and see where it took them, and so thank you for that. We have like 2 minutes left. Why don't you each take a minute, starting with Richard, and just say whatever you would like to about the poetry you heard or about the poets and their importance to us.
Well, returning to one thing that you mentioned earlier, Harry, was academic poetry. Well, that's actually, if you look at the total history of poetry, academic poetry occupies just a brief spectrum on the band. If you go back to the Middle Ages, there were no academic poets. There were troubadours. They were people that were moved to recite their poetry, and they found patrons, and people said, "Oh, I like that." So this academic type of poetry was a sort of a solidification of certain standards made up by people who said, "This is what poetry is and what it shall be, and we are the people that control what is decided to be poetry." But obviously, you can't sustain something like that because people are creative, and there are voices that will exist outside of any particular academic situation or scene. So um, I think myself, it's not to put down academic poetry as such. There are good academic poets, but to me, I mean, for me in particular, the real vital poetry is what comes from your heart and your intellect by way of your voice, and that to me is the poetry that matters.
So basically, I just wanted to add to that. Number one, the West Coast was unique in the beat scene in general because they brought a quality of existentialism thing. And that's what you see in Margolis and Kaufman as well. To follow up what Richard's saying and you're saying about academia, generally speaking, we write poetry that the academics will study.
Yes.
Rarely do the academics write the poetry that we study. Although
Richard,
many of the beats academics.
go ahead, S.A. I'm sorry. Go ahead, S.A.
Although many of the beats became academics.
Yeah. Well, and you guys are well educated. One thing Richard said was he used the word troubadour. Troubadour, the root of troubadour is trobar, which means to discover. And that's part of what we're doing too. Richard once said that, poets are truth tellers, and that's true. It's also to discover and not have the answer when you begin. So this has really been a radiant, superlative reading, and it really evokes.
Yeah, thank you, Harry.
It evokes important poetry that we should all pay attention to. And so thank you, Richard Modiano and S.A. Griffin. And next Tuesday, we have two poets, Jim Cushing. Well, we have one poet, Jim Cushing, who will read the poetry of W.H. Auden, and the actor John Towie will read the poetry of Scott Michael Lubbock. So thank you once again, Richard Modiano and S.A. Griffin.